good evening, everybody, and welcome back. We took last week off, and we may as well take in the last year off. I was looking just now at the Zoom screen, and they've moved things around just a little bit. It took me 3 minutes to figure out what I needed to do. Anyway, great to see you all this evening. We've got a lot of slides to get through since it's been a couple of weeks since we've gotten together. A lot of pictures of things that have been popping up in the local environs. But I did want to show you a couple of show and tell things that have showed up here at Good Natured World Headquarters. This first thing is one, it was from our friend, Mrs. Janet, who she's an occasional visitor here, and the Good Natured Hour, occasional watcher, I should say. She works here at the Park District, and she dropped this off. And, you know, when I first looked at it, I thought, well, okay, first of all, it's really cool. It's clearly some nature-oriented creature. Second thing, I didn't look at the tag. I just, the general shape of it and everything, my first thought was, oh, it's a flea. And then I looked at it a little closer and I thought, no, not a flea. It's got little wing pads here, and it's got the zipper here, which tells us that it's going to turn into something else. And I just thought this was the coolest thing. You unzip it, and the adult comes out. So this is a cicada nymph. Look, they even made the enlarged forelimbs, which is what cicada nymphs have, so they can dig around in the soil. They can attach themselves. It doesn't have the little piercing and sucking mouth part. That would have made it even cooler. But I suppose, maybe with a little modification, a bendy straw and a little cut, you could make it even more accurate. Put that on my list of things to do. But anyway, these things, so they feed underground for a period of a few years, and then they come up and they split open the back of their exoskeleton, and then the adult emerges. Isn't that the coolest thing? So they even did a pretty good job of replicating the pattern that is very similar to what we see on the backs of our annual cicada. So this isn't a periodical cicada. Next year, 2024, that's when our very own brood 13 that we have in this area will be coming up. The one that we see every 17 years. This is the annual cicada. Despite their name, annual cicadas, nobody really has come out and said they're underground for this many years. I've heard a period that ranges from an estimate that ranges from 2 to 5. But yeah, I just thought this was super cool. And I don't know if this is the name of the company. It says Thrashy #1. So anyway, I've been playing with it for a while. I've been taking it actually out to some of the outreach programs that we're doing, even though we're a little ahead of schedule for cicadas to be emerging. They usually don't start showing themselves around here till we get into June and the ground really starts to warm up. Anyway, that was one show and tell that I couldn't wait to show you. And then let's see, what should we do next? Let's do this. So yesterday, unfortunately, it's not alive anymore, and I don't know if that means it died a natural death, it just got too cold, or if it got killed purposely. So I'm holding it like this so you can see the way the light, shines off the abdomen. It looks at first glance like a bumblebee, but it's got that shiny black abdomen. There's just a few little hairs. There's not really any other signs of markings or anything. This is a female carpenter bee. It's the large carpenter bee that we have in this area. There's also a small carpenter bee that's kind of a bluish green colored and smaller. Male carpenter bees are the ones we often see and alert us to the fact that we even have carpenter bees. They're the ones that hover in front of the holes that the females create. Now, the females are the ones that will make a hole. It's got to be big enough to fit her body in. So it's, I would say it's maybe 3/8 of an inch. Some people will say almost half an inch in diameter, but it's usually perfectly round, and it's in untreated wood. That's where the female will chew in, and then that's where she will then deposit her eggs. So yes, they are an insect that a lot of building managers are not thrilled about. I don't know. I've always kind of hoped to have some in my deck. My deck needs to be replaced. I guess if they come back year after year, they can do some significant damage. We usually see them in the wood on our picnic shelter. Whoa. No. On our picnic shelters in our parks too. And I know our guys will go out there with insecticides to spray and kill them. Despite their reputation for damaging wood, you know, their ecological niche is to chew into dead wood on trees. It just so happens we don't have a lot of dead trees, but we do have a lot of untreated wood on our own human structures. These guys are great pollinators. Both the males and the females visit plants, collect nectar and pollen, feed on the nectar themselves, and move the pollen around. The female, we know this is a female because there's no marking on the face. Males have a really bold, light colored, like a square or rectangle marking. It's a light colored marking right in the center of the face, and the female does not. So anyway, too bad for this little girl, but maybe this summer you can keep an eye open and test yourself. Is it a bumble? Is it a carpenter? Especially when you see them on flowers. Now, if it's chewing in the wood on your deck, you know it's probably not a bumble. But they're much maligned because of what they do and it being perceived as damage. They're really just, you know, chewing into wood. If you want to try and deter them, painting the wood is often a good time to do that. A good way to do that. They can't perceive the grain and the dead wood structures that they look for if the wood is covered up with a thick coat of paint. So let's see, I had a couple other things too, and I'm not sure how to show them because some of them relate to slides that we have. I'm going to show this and then we'll describe it later on. Here's a little jar, and it looks like we've got something covered in white here. And again, boy, I wish I could get this camera to focus a little better up close. Does it focus if I pull it back? Maybe I should have just taken a picture of this. What we're looking at is droppings from a flicker. And I tell you, this is about the only time of year, well, it's the easiest time of year to find these droppings. Throughout the late winter and springtime, up until about maybe a week or two ago, our local public agencies, even some HOAs that have hired management, natural areas management firms have had, there's been prescribed burns going on. So we've got a lot of open fields where the plant life is just starting to come back. As we'll see in some photos later on, those open fields, those prairie areas have a lot of mounds. Some of those mounds are bunch grasses, but a lot of those mounds are anthills. And flickers are northern flickers. In this area, we have the yellow shafted northern flicker. They're a woodpecker that's, boy, I should have thrown a picture up here. They're one of the 6 or 7 woodpeckers that we see in this area. They have a little red on the back of their head, and the males will have a black malar marking, a black mustache. Well, they love ants. And so when our fields have been cleared by fire, these ant hills are very prominent. In springtime, the ants are starting to get more active. So the flickers will tap down into them. And it's really easy to see the ants, the ant hills, the flicker activity, and the flicker droppings, which are coated in white. They look almost, depending on the size of the one that you find, they look almost like a little white caterpillar sitting on the ground, some type of white insect. And the reason we know they are flicker dropping, so one, they're covered in this white material. That's the urates that come out. That's how birds excrete the same waste matter that we excrete in urine. So there's urates on the outside, and then the inside is all ant exoskeletons. It's super cool. In the sunlight, you can see them shining. Not so well here in the fine lighting we have here at Good Natured World Headquarters. And yes, Laura, a white good and plenty, that's an excellent description. Yeah, not so licoricey though. But yeah, this is a great time of year to go out and look for them if you're out in a prairie that has been recently burned and has lots of ant activity. All right, I'm going to do this last thing, and then that will actually take us to our first slide. So remember how we talked about the butternut, also known as the white walnut, and my continued quest to find the mother tree that has to be in my neighborhood. I haven't gotten any closer to finding it, but I have found 1, 2, 3 more butternut shells. And what I did, I started to get strategic about this. Let's go ahead and share our screen. Let's see here. I'm going to optimize, and I'm going to go here. Somehow, for some reason, the Park District, I guess they've built that into our Zoom subscription, where we always get a little advertisement there from the Park District. All right, let's take a look. Here is the general vicinity. Local folks were looking at the west side of St. Charles. Let's see, up here is Prairie. Here's Davis School. I happen to live over here. And when I found one of these in my backyard the other day. I was cleaning up some of the mulberry and the buckthorn little saplings that are surrounding my yard. So I couldn't believe, I looked down, there was a butternut. So here's that X. I was walking over to Rocket Ship Park a couple weeks ago, also known as Kehoe Park, which is over here on Prairie and Howard Street, right here. And I found a butternut here, butternut nut, the empty husk, empty shell. I found one here, and then I found a few here. So this is Davis Field Park. Here's 5th Street, 6th Street, Cutler, Mosedale. This is where I found the majority of these shells. But years ago, I used to find them around whatever creature was moving them around. They put one on the tank, the propane tank of my grill, and they put one on the lower, the windowsill of one of my lower windows. So I've found multiple shells there in the past, but I haven't in a long time until this past week. So the mystery continues. It's somewhere in this vicinity. I have found the most in this area right here, but the quest continues. And if you all are so inclined to take a walk on the west side of St. Charles, might be a little easier to find this tree once the leaves start to pop out. Now the white walnut is closely related. They're the same genus as the black walnut, Ugland. So it's got a similar long leaf with many leaflets on it. The fruit, as we get into later summer and the fruits come out, the fruit is more oblong than what we see with the black walnut, and it's also fuzzy on the outside. The green husk is fuzzy. Anyway, still haunting me, tormenting me. Keep you posted. All right, so like I said, we got a couple of weeks worth of photos to get through. This is an interesting little plant. Now, it's not a native plant, but it is growing in the path over at Fearsome Creek Fen. And it starts off as these fuzzy little rosettes. We can see we've got several of them along here, but these flowers, you know, when you see little flowers like this this time of year, my thoughts always go to spring beauty, but that is not the case here. These are called Draba verna, our early Whitlow grass, and they're not grasses, by the way. They're considered Eurasian in origin. Let's see if we can zoom in here a little bit. So here's the basal rosettes here, here, and here, fuzzy little plants, and then it was kind of breezy the day I was trying to take these pictures. I was trying to show what the petals look like. There are other Draba species that have been brought to the United States. This is the only one that has petals that have deep cuts in them. You can sort of see it on this one here. In fact, I think we've got one more picture here, maybe. Yeah, these are kind of blurry too. I had to get down on the ground and try to block the wind, and I guess I didn't do a very good job. Well, here, you can see up here, see those deep cuts? It's a neat little plant, not terribly common that I know of around here. And this was growing, this was a pretty rough sort of terrain. There's not a lot that can grow here. There was the remnants of an old gravel path here. I suppose in the field guides, they would call this a disturbed area. Whoops, even though it is let's go back. As disturbed area, even though Fearsome Creek Fen is a Illinois nature preserve, there are parts of it that are a little less than pristine. It's come light years ahead from where it was even 10 years ago. If you haven't been to Fearsome Creek Fen lately, be sure and check it out. Lots of restoration work has been going on there. Lots of new sedges are coming in, and the place is really starting to shape up. So this happens to be a native pussy willow that grows there, and I was taken by the little insect that was pollinating or that was gathering pollen on this willow. Willow is really important to a lot of insects in the early springtime. Let's go on to the next picture. Why isn't this advancing? There we go. Now, this is not my photo. This was sent in by a reader, but it was the same week, within the same week that we saw that fly on that pussy willow. This is one of the Syrphid flies, Syrphid, S-Y-R-P-H-I-D. That refers to the family, but they're also called flower flies and hover flies. They visit a lot of flowers, and they are some really excellent bee mimics. They're considered actually to be pollinators because of their attraction to the flies. Here's this picture, and then this picture too. Now we know this is, we can tell this is a fly and not a bee from its one pair of wings rather than two. And these huge eyes, fly eyes, and then these tiny little fly antennae. So there's several species of syrphid flies that we see in this area, and turns out they get going just as early in the spring as a lot of our native bees too. So keep an eye open. We'll see these too throughout the summertime as they continue through their life cycles. I believe, and if we back up just a minute, I believe that there's, so, as flies, their larvae are, small and legless. They're fly larvae, so they're kind of, some people call them maggots, but they are beneficial in that stage too, because their larvae often will prey on other insects like aphids. So we got a double benefit from these guys here, both in the immature stage and also in the adult stage of their lives. So here I threw this picture in. We're going to be taking a look at what flowers are blooming. Some of our bloodroots are still going strong. Some of them are already done. We had that heat this past weekend, and these early spring flowers, as much as they want to get up and out and bloom before the leaves come out on the trees, when we get that burst of warmth like that, especially when we don't have a lot of rain to accompany it, that can be really hard on these flowers, and the petals don't last that long. Well, I put this picture up because it was taken by my friend Elizabeth, who actually passed away a couple months ago. It's one of my favorite pictures. She was a huge fan of pollinators and springtime wildflowers. She was actually taking a picture of the bloodroot when this little bee happened by. This is a mining bee. It's got a great name. I don't know if we can, here we can show it here. The neighborly mining bee, Andrena vicina. And this, I asked our friend Terry Measley, he's a local bee expert, native bee expert, and I said, Terry, any ideas on this one? It's not even a clear shot. And he says, well, it's definitely an Andrenid. Neighborly mining bee is a good guess, because they are probably our most common of the mining bees. They're pretty conspicuous at this time of the year. And then he said, and this is a male, and the way we can tell that is by these longer antennae. See how long they are? And then he said, see the fuzz right here? He calls that the bee's magnificent mustache. So male mining bee bypassing some bloodroot. I love this photo. This is the perfect time of year to appreciate it. Wasn't expecting this picture yet, but let's tell you what, let's I'm gonna turn the sound on. Let's play it again. Fish frogs. So this is also at Fearson Creek Fen. We'll watch it one more time. So what the frog is doing there is vocal mechanisms there, calling to attract a female. It's only the males, the frogs, it's the males that do the vocalizing. It's the females that listen, and based on what they hear, they make their choices. I was really taken though, if it wasn't for the way this guy was puffing out that throat sac, he would have blended in with all of this other cattail nonsense we've got poking up here, all of these little bits of broken off stems and everything. It was really hard. In fact, I was also noticing how when he was calling, the sound didn't even seem like it was coming from where he was. It sounded like it was much closer to the edge of this wet pocket than it actually was. The resolution on this, or the clarity here, isn't that great on the video or on this phone, just because I had my phone. I zoomed in like, I don't know, 15 times or something to get that close, but this is a still shot of that same inflated throat sac that it kind of reminds me of a big wad of bubble gum. But the chorus frogs have been joined now by, let's see, the peepers. And when it warmed up last weekend, we were even hearing tree frogs and then toads. Toads love to call when the temperatures warm up, and in some areas we actually hit 80 last weekend. So there were even American toads that were calling. Now, the cold temperatures shut things down for a few days. Alison Sacerdote Volat, who is the coordinator for the regional calling frog survey, she actually sent out an email today that conditions look good. The temperature tonight is going to be above 45 degrees. So it's kind of a last chance to go out and monitor these early spring singers. The next phase of frog calling takes place as we get into May. And that's when we'll hear a lot more from the tree frogs and the toads. And then we will probably, depending on the temperature, if it really warms up, then the green frogs, the cricket frogs, and the bullfrogs will start up too. But we really haven't heard much from them yet. Now, okay, so I mentioned earlier the flicker poop and the burnt prairies. This is also a great time. As the grasses and all the plants start to come back, it's going to be really hard to see these again. But right now is a good time to go out if you want to go and go on a vole hunt. This is a vole nest. It looks kind of like a bird nest that blew down and tipped over. But if you pick it up, usually the voles will hear you coming and they'll scram. But sometimes if you approach really slowly, you can take back that cover and find a little vole, or sometimes you'll find vole babies because they reproduce frequently throughout the year. But yeah, they're much easier to find right now when the grasses are so low. And then here's what I was talking about. If you did want to go on a hunt for flicker poop slash white good and plenties. This is, see all these bumps here? Here's one, here, here. You just kind of wander around and you go up to these lumps and you can see there's smaller holes where the ants were coming out, but these bigger holes show that creatures have been sticking their beaks there to feed. So it's just kind of a, I don't know, a little seasonal thing I always look forward to. Just and these ant hills themselves, I've always wanted to be able to see just how, this is the mound that's kind of the central part, but how far do these things go out? How deep down do they go? And perhaps most important, what kind of ants are these? Ants have baffled me to no end. I've tried to learn different, not even species, just families, but boy, there's so many little parts you need to look at. Maybe that'll be something I'll put on my bucket list, is learning more about ants. But again, it's a great time to do it. Now, boy, I don't know if I put this album on shuffle. I'm not sure why this is coming up now either, but this is not at Pearson Creek Fen or in a prairie even. This was underneath an evergreen over at North Cemetery here in St. Charles. I love walking in cemeteries. They're so I find them very peaceful and soothing, and I love especially looking at some of the older dates of different graves of people in the area. Anyway, I also love looking underneath evergreens because they're a popular spot for owls to hang out. I was looking up just to see if by any chance I might find an owl, whether it's a recently fledged great horned owl or there were still, just a week or so ago, there were still some long-eared owls hanging out in the area. But anyway, what I found was not an actual owl, but an owl pellet. And we can see that this contained, well, at least 2 animals, and they are different little critters. We can tell by the teeth here, we've got front incisors and then a big gap and then molars. So this was a rodent of some type. I didn't pick it up. I didn't try to identify it. Because I was looking at this skull over here, which is not a rodent. I did pick that one up. Oh man. All right, we'll go back to that in a second. So this skull has a lot of teeth. It's got incisors, it's got premolars, it's got molars. There's no obvious gap here. This is a shrew skull. I'm guessing from the size of it, it's a northern short-tailed shrew, but you can always tell these shrew skulls because their teeth are this cool, really dark brown or reddish color. If the light is right, you can really see the red color. But anyway, yeah, that was a pretty well-fed owl there. He had both a little, say, mouse or vole skull, mouse or vole, and also a shrew as a meal. Boy, yeah, I don't know how these things got so because this gives you an idea of the size of that owl pellet, and all of the parts that are contained within. And then there's these bones. Now, I don't know what the story is here, but these things were huge. This is a pelvis, and then this is some sort of a leg bone. I don't know if this was a cow or a horse, but this was in the, I don't know if this was still considered North Cemetery or if this was considered Norris Woods. I don't know exactly where the dividing line is there, but this was not amongst the graves of the cemetery. This was leaning up against the tree, just a little bit west of the dumpster at the cemetery. But here's with the 2 5/8 inch scale of measurement. And these things were just huge. And I don't know, I would love to know where they were found, if there were any other parts with them, and yeah, what this animal was. But they're probably still there if you want to go, anybody, want to go check it out. It's this looks like the base of an elm tree. It's a tree just west of the dumpster at North Cemetery, the part of North Cemetery that's on the west side of Route 25. So, boy, folks, I don't know what happened to the carefully planned order I had these slides in, but now we're looking at Marsh Marigolds. So they are blooming right now. This is a plant that loves seep. We have these popping up in a few different places around St. Charles. There's some, and actually there's 2 places just at Hickory Knolls. They're coming up in the seep that we have coming off of the first came behind the nature center. If you cross over the Boys Home Road and go up the first hill you come to, you'll see these things growing on the side, which it seems like a kind of a strange place to have a wetland, but there is water seeping out. There's groundwater that's seeping out of that glacial formation, and it makes for the perfect spot for this this groundwater loving plant to grow. It's also growing over here. This is what looks like a creek when you see it. This is the water that flows alongside the parking lot at Hickory Knolls. But that's actually, it's spring fed. There was an underground, there was groundwater that was accidentally dug up when we built the building 12 years ago. And the decision was made to just let it flow and see what it did. Well, it carved out this little channel, and periods like we're in right now, where we have gotten a lot of recent rain and some of our groundwater has been recharged. There's a fair amount of water, and there's a little bit of a current even with this this particular daylighted spring. And the Marsh Marigolds there are doing really, really well. Sure, let's go with Toothwort. This is one of several woodland wildflowers that is blooming right now. In the past, we've talked about the doctrine of signatures, and how back in Greek and Roman times, the thinking was that if a plant, that plants are shaped to suggest their usage, their relation to the healing qualities that they have. So in this case, Toothwort has these toothy projections on the leaves. Supposedly it could be used as a cure for different dental ailments. You could grind up the root and make a poultice of it. I've also heard the root has kind of a spicy, like a peppery sort of a flavor to it. Some people will use it as a seasoning in that way. Well, the Toothwort is blooming. Let's see if we got another wildflower. So this is Bellwort. This is one of the few wildflowers that I can readily say the genus name of, Uvularia, because it's named for the uvula that hangs at the back of your throat. Now, can you use Uvularia to fix a sore throat? I wouldn't recommend it, but it was named after its resemblance to that part of the human anatomy. And then Dutchman's breeches, which don't refer to anatomy, but rather the clothing we use to cover up. These look like little bloomers, don't they, hanging from the line? Now, a lot of these early spring wildflowers, the Dutchman's breeches, the Bloodroot. Oh, in fact, I think our next slide here is that, if it's in the order that I think it should be. Yeah, so Bloodroot and Dutchman's breeches are two of several of our early woodland wildflowers that rely on ants for seed dispersal. I think we talked about that the last time we got together, but here we can see that this Bloodroot is already done. So inside this little package here is where the seeds lie. When this pops open, those seeds fall down. And each one of them has a little structure and a lysosome on it that is part fat, part lipids, and part sugars or carbohydrates. And that is exactly, it's like frosting for the ants. They see that, they smell that, they pick it up, they carry it back to their anthill, and that aids in the seed dispersal for this and several other of our woodland wildflowers. Now, this was the scene that greeted me the other day. This is at one of the places that I do outreach at. It's called the Reserve of Geneva. And this was last Friday, so it was a very warm day. This is the tire of my motorcycle. And I'll be honest, when I got to the reserve there to do my program, I parked and I looked over here. And what I saw was this pan of water that had these little green things in it. And what registered in my brain at that moment was, oh, I wonder if they're doing some kind of mosquito abatement. The little green things look like the tablets that are used to kill mosquito larvae. But I didn't really give it too much thought. I went in and I did the program. Well, as soon as I got into the program room, the residents there said, "Did you see our duck?" So I had to say I did not. He said, "Well, it's surrounded by 3 big orange cones and a pan of water. So we'll take you out to look at it. So after we finished the good-natured part of my visit, we went out and we explored this little area here. I tell you, this duck has a lot of pressure. There's a lot riding on this duck. Virtually every resident in this building is now invested in this duck's well-being. There's a lot of opinions. Should the cones have gone up? What actually started the cones was there was a worker who was removing lights from this tree back here. And he noticed the duck. Well, he went inside. Well, then the landscapers came and they started cutting back this bunch grass. And so people ran out there and they said, no, 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 you've gotta stop, because this is where our mama duck is hiding. She's actually sitting on her eggs. Now, can you see her in this picture? I thought this camouflage was just absolutely stunning. You can see some feathers here, and ducks will pull a lot of breast feathers to insulate and line their nest, but she's in there too. If we zoom in down, now we can see. So here she is, trying as hard as she can to be invisible while all these prying eyes are trying to find her. Again, I zoomed in. We were probably 10 feet away or so when I took this photo. So we weren't really in her face, but I just could not get over. I would not have known she was there had the residents not told me about it. But that kind of gives us a clue as to where we're at with some of our other springtime happenings. This little group isn't quite there yet, but it does show what is often the ratio with our mallards. It's not always one-on-one. I think these two males here are competing for the affections of this female. They might just be a happy little trio for all I know, but this seems to always be the case. There's always more male mallards than there are females. And I don't know if that's because of the risks that the females have to go through in order to protect and incubate those eggs, even when they're really well camouflaged. A lot of the nests don't survive, and a lot of the hens don't survive. There's so many predators that look for nesting ducks at this time of year. It might be something like a great horned owl. It might be a fox. It might be a coyote. It might be a mink. And I think that's kind of maybe why we do see a lot of waterfowl nesting in parking lots. This is actually the third one. It was the first duck, but it's the third waterfowl nest I've seen in the last few weeks. There's geese at 2 other facilities that I visit who have opted to nest on parking lot islands. Of course, we see them too in planters. I received a photo from, remember a few weeks ago, we talked about the yellow-crowned night herons that are out in Rock Falls. That family, Jan and Dean, they sent me some pictures of a mallard that is nesting now where their gas meter heats their house. So I think over time, these waterfowl have learned, or maybe it's just sort of an evolution in action. The ones that nest in the midst of humans have a greater nesting success rate. Whatever it is, but I think there is a slightly greater chance of survival when there's, I don't know that a mink would come. Well, if it was in the area, it might try, but being on a parking island, surrounded by asphalt is not a very natural setting, but it could be a setting that affords at least a little more protection than usual from those nest predators. Bob, I have to thank you for these next few photos. We talked when we met before about snakes coming up from their hibernacula where they've spent the winter, which is usually in some sort of a cavity underneath the ground. It might be an old rodent burrow, say a chipmunk burrow or a groundhog burrow. I know a couple years ago, there was an old abandoned well out in the west part of the county that had all kinds of snakes hanging out in it. Something that will give them a space that is below the frost line where they can keep their bodies from freezing. So they're still at a cold temperature, but somewhere maybe in the upper 30s is what a snake would need to survive through the winter. With turtles, they head down to the bottom of their pond. And these two have now headed back up. I think these are both female painted turtles. I was just looking at the tails here, and they're pretty narrow. They don't have that thick and additional length that we see from the males. But these two girls are up and they're soaking up the sun. They spent the winter down at the bottom of this water body, taking oxygen in through their skin. They have specially adapted cells in both their throat and their rectum that allows them to extract oxygen from the water. So they've been hanging out down there, and now they are building up, soaking up that sun, getting that vitamin D. If they were in an area where the oxygen levels drop dangerously low, now we don't usually see this in rivers, but we do see this in ponds. These turtles will actually use part of their shell, part of the bone, to counteract the lactic acid buildup that they undergo when they are getting very little oxygen underneath the water. So they could be coming up here to get that vitamin D so they can process the calcium in their diets to help build back that shell. Sunshine does all sorts of wonderful things for turtles. Gives them that plus their diet gives them some of those brilliant colors that we see too, like on this little bambino. So this is a painted turtle too that Bob ran into. This is the top side, what we call the carapace of the turtle, and then this is the bottom, or what we call the plastron of the turtle. You can see why they're called painted turtles, because of these brilliant colors. Now, I kind of wonder, Bob, so in this area, the subspecies of painted turtle that we see is called the Midland painted turtle. And on the mature or the older turtles, these scutes out here, these scales are kind of a yellowish color. And then the midline here, there's a pattern that often fades over time. But what I'm seeing here is a deeper orange color, which could just be the turtle's young. This color may lighten up over the years. But this middle pattern too is very prominent. And what we see a lot of in this area is crosses between subspecies. There's another subspecies of painted turtle that's frequently sold in pet stores. It's the Western painted turtle. They have a much more highly patterned and more colorful plastron than the Midland painted turtle does. So we see these different ranges of intergrades between the different subspecies. And I kind of wonder, with the beautiful color on this one, if that's maybe what we're seeing here. This one might have a little Western painted turtle in its lineage. But either way, cute as a button. I actually had a phone call at the end of last week. It was quite interesting because it started off, hey, we've got this baby painted turtle and somebody needs to help it. Can you give us a call? So my first reaction was, all right, we need to coach these people into putting the turtle back where they found it. Nothing messes up a baby turtle more than moving it from where it's walking along. This is all part of an important orientation process that these young turtles go through. I can't explain how it is that they know where they're headed, but if you think you're helping a turtle by, I talked to a gentleman one time, he actually picked up a little baby and he drove it from St. Charles over to Pratt's Wayne Woods Forest Preserve, because he knew there were a lot of turtles over there and he thought it would do better. Well, that, you know, the turtle probably, you know, or hopefully it recovered. It might have gotten eaten, you know, from just being so disoriented, but these turtles, it's so hard for us to see them and not want to help them, but just letting them go on their way. If perchance they are, you know, in the middle of a road or in the middle of a busy sidewalk or something, and you think that they could benefit from, you know, moving a few feet, you know, off of the main course of traffic, you could probably do that, and you know, you'd be okay. The turtle will be okay. Make sure though you're not putting yourself in danger to do that. But anyway, super cool things that are happening as we. It looks like the next week or so is going to be back down the 50s, 60s. I think we got some 40s over the weekend. Probably won't see as much movement with our little cold-blooded friends as we did this past week, but they will still continue to be moving up. Now, these turtles, they probably hatched in their underground nest last fall, but they stayed put. They fed off of the what was left of the egg sac that they hatched out of, and once they get into the water, then they can start feeding on little invertebrates and things like that, and start putting on some size. But there probably are still some nests that still are to be emptied. So keep an eye out once we get back to some warmer temperatures again. Now, this is a not so great picture. Came to us from our friends over at Creek Bend at the Forest Preserve District. Somebody had sent this in, wondering if this was an escaped exotic or just what we were looking at here. Well, pretty sure this is a gray tree frog. It's got so gray tree frogs, we don't often see this because they're usually not splayed out the way this one is, and this one is, by the way, no longer living. But they've got this flash pattern or this warning coloration on the inside of their thighs. So we've got the gray pattern here, we've got the flash pattern here, and then we've got this bizarre blue color. Well, when I first looked at the picture, it was pretty small, and I was thinking, I hadn't read the whole email. I thought, well, gee, it's been really cold. I know one time I accidentally dug up a toad in, it was in November. I was turning a compost pile. It was pretty chilly, and that toad was a bluish color. It wasn't this deep of a blue, but it was blue. It was uniformly blue. This is not uniform. It's got lighter blue here, darker blue here, and then it's got gray, and it's flash pattern here. I think what we're looking at here, and remember, it is no longer living. I think this frog was the unintended victim of herbiciding. I know now this was not in a St. Charles Park District park. This was in a forest preserve. The email where the photo was attached to just said Wasco, so maybe Campton Forest Preserve. But I know our crew will put a blue dye in the herbicides that they use so that they know where they've treated. And you know, it's an obvious, and you might even see this when you're out walking around. I saw just the other day there were some plants that had a bright blue color to them. So that's what my guess is that this is a great tree frog, not an exotic. It's not a poison dart frog. It's not something somebody let go. It's just a frog that was in the wrong place at the wrong time. This, for reference, this is a great tree frog. This is a picture I took a few years ago. This was up at Camp Tomochichi Knolls Forest Preserve. It's the old Boy Scout camp that's up on Gilbert's Road in, what is it, Huntley? So chubby little guys, overall gray appearance. Unless they are excited or agitated, then that gray can become a really brilliant green color, but never that bizarre blue that we just saw on the deceased frog. You can see the enlarged toe pads here. This was actually, so it's like, you're probably thinking, why did you take a picture of a frog on a box? Well, I thought it was really interesting. There were a whole bunch of frogs. This was by the dumpster, and dumpsters a lot of times have organic matter that's decomposing, which draws in flies, and then the flies, the insects that are drawn to that are then attractive to creatures like this. So yeah, just another nature tip: check the dumpsters at forest preserves, because sometimes you see some kind of cool things. All right, so this is this is my my attempt at dramatic representations of, yeah, more scat. This is this was on the picnic table at Johnson's Mound. The Johnson's Mound, the older picnic pavilion at Johnson's Mound, it dates back to the Civilian Conservation Corps days, so we're talking the 1930s. It is wonderful roosting habitat for big brown bats, and you can tell they're there when you start to see the scat showing up. What I do. Now, something I hadn't noticed before until the other day was the scat is one sign, and that's certainly the more immediate sign that the bats are in the vicinity. But something that has happened over time that I think is really cool, have worn out. There's these worn spaces on the rafters in the shelter where the bats, they fly in, they land, and then they use their little claws to walk up, and then they tuck in these crevices up here where the beams come together up on the roof of the shelter. So here's a little bat, little brown, or it's pretty sure it's a big brown bat. That's the main colonial species that we see around here. But he was definitely not happy. This was during the Wild Ones Wildflower Walk that was there last Sunday, and he was kind of agitated. I think we woke him up, so he was shuffling around as the group was chatting. I wished I'd had my wits about me so that I could have taken the series of photographs. I've never seen this before. I've heard this is how it happens. All you're going to see is a blurry picture here. But while I was watching this bat, it shifted around. And what we're looking at here isn't the bat hanging upside down anymore, but the bat is hanging right side up. So his ears are up here. He's in the process of twisting around. He actually, he went potty right in front of me. He dropped some scat, and he also shot a little urine down too. I don't know if that was a comment on the activity that was going on, or maybe we just woke him up, and you get woken up and then all of a sudden you got to go. I don't know, but it was really cool. And that maybe answers a question for you. Bats do, when they sleep, they are hanging with their heads down, but whether it's during the course of a daytime sleep or whether it's over the course of their hibernation, they do occasionally stir, and they turn around and they put their bottoms down first to go to the bathroom. All right, I'm going to wrap up here with a little reminder. As I mentioned, that was the Wild Ones native plant walk that we were at Johnson's Mound for last week. The Wild Ones native plant sale is, gosh, it's less than a month away now. It's the second Saturday in May. It's held at a lovely location. It's Gray Willows Farm, which is part of the Captain Township Open Space initiative. It's over there on Coron Road. There's a little map there. And we're going to have our friend Ponytail Dave. He's agreed to supply organic vegetables and herbs. So in addition to those native plants that I know you're going to want to get for your yards, you can plant your vegetables, get your vegetable sets there as well. All right. Well, that was a bit of an ordeal because a lot of this was not in the order that I put it in. I must have hit something funny. But let's tell you what, let's stop this share. And oh, you know, there was one more thing. I see we're after 9 o'clock. I'm not sure if I can get this to pull up and to play properly or not, but let me see if I can get this open because there's something I wanted to give you guys a heads up about. This was an email that was sent to Good Natured World headquarters last week. And then right after that, I got another one. And it's a sound that people are hearing and they get a little disturbed by it. This one in particular, I thought was really kind of scary. All right, I'm gonna get it pulled up and then I'm going to share this. So this was on a Ring camera and this was at oh gosh, I think she said it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. Where are you here again? There we go. All right, I'm going to share the screen. Hold on. Optimized. All right. All right, does everybody see the Nest Cam? All right, I'm going to play this. You hear that? Monica. Something is very persistent right now, right then. All right. That is the persistent begging call of a young great horned owl. There's an owl nest in the neighborhood. All right, I'm gonna tell you what, we'll just stop the share. Right after that, I had another recording from a family in Batavia, same thing, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, they get woken up by these what sounds like screams. The key here, one, it's nighttime, 2, it's very repetitive. You know, when mammals vocalize like that, it's not usually repeated. There's a little more, you know, if it's, say, if it's foxes screaming at each other or something, there's some give and take. It's not this over and over and over again thing. But where we're at right now with our great horned owls is they earliest nesting pairs, their young have now fledged. So they've left the nest. They haven't left the care of mom and dad. They're still out there and they're demanding food and they need a lot of it because they're still actively growing. So keep an ear open for that in the coming weeks. There's, like I said, there's some that have fledged, but there's some that are still pretty small that are not going to be leaving the nest for a few more weeks yet. But yeah. Glad I remembered that because that's something, it's kind of cool to hear. You might also start to hear the hoots of the parents now too. Now that the young are grown up, they don't have to be, the parents don't have to be quite as secretive about their ways. They can communicate. They're keeping track of each other and their babies too. So lots going on in the sound world with regard to what our owls are up to. All right, got a couple of chats here. Yes, the white good and plenty. I'm going to remember that one, Laura, because that's a good one. How often does one see flicker? I only see Downy and Hairy. Kate, it kind of depends. They are a species that I know we didn't see them for quite a while at Hickory Knolls, but then a family adopted some of the trees not too far from the nature center. And I think once they figured out they've got trees and ants, it was all they needed in order to set up. So we see them frequently there, but I wouldn't see they're seen everywhere. Like, yeah, in my neighborhood, I see what you see. I see downies and red bellies. I think those two are probably a little more common. Those two species are a little more common in King County than the flickers, but the setup needs to be right. If you've got ants nearby, then maybe you'll get flickers too. I know a lot of people don't like to have ants nearby though. Have you seen any twin leaf around? I've only ever seen it at Northwoods. Laura, I saw one twin leaf this past week at Hickory. Do you know where the cherry tree trail, that goes up on Water Tower Hill? There was one twin leaf and all its little white petals were laying on the ground underneath. The heat, I think, did the flower, it finished what it had to do early. There might be some other twin leaf in that area. We were doing our King County Certified Naturalist field trip on Saturday. So I walked past it. The two leaves that look like butterfly wings, those are still very obvious, but the flower itself was done. I heard, so during the Wild Ones Wildflower Walk last Saturday, there was a gentleman, a former KCCNer, graduated KCCNer, who was part of the Plants of Concern monitoring. And he said that at Norris, he counted over 300 twin leaf plants. Another spot, it's hard to get to because it's not on a trail, but Red Oak Nature Center has a chunk of twin leaf as well, a pretty lot of it. It's near the railroad tracks. It's easier to see actually if you walk on the railroad tracks and then walk into the woods. I could talk to you more about how to find it, but I was worried that the railroad, because they drive through, they take the train through and they spray herbicide to keep the vegetation away from the train tracks. And I always wondered if that little colony of twin leaf was going to survive or not. But the last I heard, it was still there. Let's see, remind me when it's okay to cut out garden beds without disturbing cocoons and like, short answer, Jerry, never. I've been going back and forth. Tufts University actually issued a pretty good explanation. Any stems that are hollow or have a soft pith in the middle, they said if you can cut those to, I think they said, they recommended a height of like 18 inches, but then you just always leave those stems because of the insects, and we're mostly talking about like our leaf cutter bees, it's the bees that nest in stems. They don't use the stem while it's actively growing. So the idea is to leave some stems that are going to be not actively growing. So in their second year above the ground, the actively growing one is going to have the flower on it, but then the other one will be there for the bees to use. Someone told me too that you can cut the stems and bundle them and then set them upright somewhere else. Because I was saying, I've also heard you can cut them and then just leave them lying in place. But those, I think you mess with the orientation of the insect inside. So yeah, the ideal time is never, but I know that doesn't, mesh well with a lot of people's
have those crazy tall cup plant stems. I mean, they're like 9 feet tall.
Yes,
and
they are.
they're falling over. So I want to, so maybe I will cut them down to 18 inches and then put them up against the garage between the two garages or something like that.
Right. Well, it might be a kind of fun experiment to see what you get too.
Yeah,
If you can see a
cut them
good
down. I cut one down last year, and sure enough, there was something alive inside of it, and I was like, "Oh crap!" So I don't want to do that again.
Try to put it back.
Abort mission, abort mission. Okay, I'll give it a whirl. I'll tell you if I see anything.
I know, and that question actually came up during the wildflower walk a couple weeks ago, because a lot of people garden with natives, which is great, but they still want the clean look. And she said the stems are really starting to bother me. And I said, well, there's things that happen, in nature all the time, where not all the stems survive, but if there's a way to keep as many as possible in the vicinity, and I like your idea, Jerry, the fact that some of them are falling over anyway, maybe those can just lay down somewhere else, or like you said, lean them up against somewhere. And yeah, let us know what you see in terms of inward and outward activities. Sometimes you see flickers feasting on sumac berries. Yeah. So yeah, flickers, they eat a varied diet, but that's good to know. And actually where I found the flicker good and plenty was at Hickory Knolls, and there's sumac on one end and of the natural area, and there's those anthills in the middle. So kind of the best of both worlds there. So yeah, hopefully that information was helpful. Kay, I see we are way past bedtime. So I guess I better quit babbling for now. We'll see y'all back again next week for more good nature.
Thank you, Pam.
Great night, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Pam.
Pam. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam.